Who am I and why am I on the stage? Well, I was a full-time commercial lawyer at one of the biggest law firms called Allen & Overy for 25 years. And originally I'm from a low-income background. I know I don't necessarily present like it now. That's part of the problem, but things are changing. So I've always had a great passion for making sure that there's socioeconomic diversity in law, and including the City of London law. So how did I get into apprenticeships? Well, I worked out that it was a really, really valuable way of making sure that nobody is excluded from the legal profession. And after 25 years of working as a lawyer, I decided, having co-led the introduction of solicitor apprenticeships at Allen & Overy, to leave and persuade all the biggest 50 law firms in the country to introduce solicitor apprenticeships if they don't have them already. And I'm pleased to say that in 6 months, all of them had. So that was a bit of a result. So now I am a full-time advocate for solicitor apprenticeships, and that's why I am here. And I'd like to introduce Jai, who is, with no notice at all, which is rather wonderful of her, prepared to answer some questions for me. She is a current legal apprentice. So I will talk for a little and then I will ask you some questions, won't I? Thank you, Jai. Okay, so I can see there's quite a lot of adults in the audience, but I'm going to go right back to basics anyway. We've had a few questions today about, what is law? So most people's experience of law as an individual will be conveyancing, buying a house, or divorce law, or criminal law, or speeding ticket law, or something like that. What the kind of law firms that I work with, and where Jai works with Squire Patton Boggs, we are commercial law firms. So quite simply, that means our clients are corporates and banks, not individuals. We've also had a few questions about, I want to be a barrister. So just to sort of clear up a little bit of confusion, legal, being a lawyer and working in the legal profession is like a generic term that encompasses barristers and solicitors. But barristers and solicitors are two completely different routes to qualification. At the moment, you can only become a solicitor through an apprenticeship. There is talk about barristers introducing an apprenticeship route. I'm in contact with the lead for that. I think all I can say at the moment is it's not imminent, but I expect it will happen one day. But solicitor apprenticeships are 100% a thing. And as I said, I believe in them so passionately, I gave up my job and my career to promote them. What did I want to say next? Yes, the next thing I want to do was clear up a bit of a myth about the legal profession only being for a certain type of person. And I've tried to visually signal this by wearing my DMs today. While in big commercial law firms, we might wear dresses like this. Men might still wear jackets. They don't wear ties anymore. You'd be very comfortable wearing that to work, wouldn't you? There's no particular form of dress. There's also no particular type of person. I heard the previous employer talking about affinity groups, and that's very important to law firms as well. So we have race and ethnicity groups, LGBTQI plus groups, and something that I care about and I've run in the past, socioeconomic diversity, social mobility groups, disability groups, visible and invisible, gender equality groups. So law firms are for everyone, and I wouldn't want anyone to think that it's not for them. Right, what did I want to say next? So, what exactly is the solicitor apprenticeship route? So it's 6 years long, so it's probably one of the longest that you've heard talked about today. It's a level 7 qualification. You can start, and we'll come on to this when I speak to Jai, that you can start with a 2-year paralegal apprenticeship to sort of test your interest if that's what you want, and then convert it essentially into the level 7 apprenticeship. You, like many other apprenticeships, you work for 4 days a week and you study for 1 day a week. By the end of 4 years, you have a full-on law degree, the same law degree that I have, essentially. And then in the last 2 years, you gain all the qualifications you need to become a fully qualified solicitor. So it used to be called LPC, but it's now SQE, no matter whether you're a traditional graduate or an apprentice. So for me, it's a no-brainer. It's equally high prestige. You get exactly the same qualifications and you get 4 years more experience. For law firms, why would they introduce it? For them, there's a benefit of using their apprenticeship levy, of course, and many of the biggest law firms have a huge surplus, so they have lots and lots and lots of levy to spend. More importantly than that, it's a way of making sure talent is not excluded by background, by which I mean financial barriers are not a cause of law firms losing the best possible talent that they could have. It also creates, and for law firms that have had apprenticeships for some time, they say it actually creates some of the best innovation of thought that they've had. And of course, we need to represent the communities that we represent. And bringing younger people into the business from more diverse backgrounds creates more diverse thinking and creates better legal thinking. So that's why law firms like it. There are 3 main advantages for young people wanting to do it. First of all, you start your learning earlier and you get to apply your learning earlier. Secondly, you start your network earlier. I'm a passionate believer in the power of networks, and networks should not just be a force for good for people with middle-class backgrounds. Everyone should have access to a network and enable it to work for them. And thirdly, the obvious financial advantage. Instead of having student debt of, say, 45, 50, £50,000, which is incredibly uncomfortable if you're from a low-income background, you know, I'm old enough to have got a full grant because my parents earn a small amount of money. And back in that day, we had a full grant. I couldn't have gone to university otherwise. So I 100% would have done this route. So no student debt. From day one, you earn a good salary. As an 18-year-old in Birmingham, the average solicitor apprentice salary is about 22,000. In London, about 25,000. By year 5, it can go up to 50, 60,000. And by the time you qualified after 6 years, many law firms will be paying £100,000. The international American law firms who offer solicitor apprenticeships, they're on record as offering £180,000, which is more than I've ever earned. As soon as you qualify. So apprenticeships can be very, very remunerative. What else did I want to say? The similarities and the differences. Oh, look, the money put them off. The similarities and the differences. So the similarities are same salary, same qualifications. Essentially, everything is the same. What are the differences? The key difference is you have to work while you're doing a degree and your professional exams, right? And I think the genuine only downside of a solicitor apprenticeship is it's hard work. But then it's meant to be hard work. I think that's the only answer. And all the apprentices I know absolutely love it. And the law firms love having them. And, you know, I work with some of the most prestigious law firms and they've started saying, actually, we don't really want a grad. Can we just have apprentices? Because they've got better work ethic. They're just better all round. I'm sure you'll agree with that when I come to you. What else? Yeah, I think let's get into the details. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay, I'll keep going. So let's get into a typical week and some of the details. So as an introduction, what I would say is people, you know, there might be some misconceptions about it. You know, do they do the photocopying? Like, absolutely not. It's exactly the same role as a trainee solicitor, a traditional trainee solicitor. You're just younger. That's it. Okay, so that's the only difference. Let me get to my questions. Jai, do you want to introduce yourself, first of all, which law firm you're at and what apprenticeship you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I'm a paralegal apprentice at Squire Patton Boggs, which is a full-service American-based law firm, and we've got offices globally. And I'm about 18 months into this apprenticeship, so into my paralegal apprenticeship. And in about June this year, I'll do my endpoint assessment and hopefully move on to the solicitor apprenticeship in September.
Great. What made you want to follow this route?
So for me, a big thing, I really like being able to see how my work is applicable. I like being able to see in the news things I've worked on, things my colleagues have worked on. And I went to a school that was very based on people going to Russell Group universities. It was their main focus. I don't think my school ever spoke to me about apprenticeships. I have friends that I know that went to Oxbridge, and the amount of support that they got going to Oxbridge was insane because we got nothing. An apprenticeship is a long and hard process to get into, and in some ways I think can be harder than applying to Oxford and Cambridge. So I wanted to go into this route. Getting a training contract once you've qualified to become a solicitor is getting harder and harder, and by then you've already got the student debt, you've got no experience past university, and it just allows you to, as Joanna said, work and get your experience and come out of it with no debt.
Yeah, that's very true. And for that reason, even if you do get through a competitive process of getting into a traditional university, you're not guaranteed a training contract by any means. Whereas if you do an apprenticeship, unless something goes very badly wrong, you're almost guaranteed a newly qualified role. And if you go onto my website, you can see the faces of some of the people who are currently working as solicitor apprentices. And there's a young woman there called Ramesa, who is also used on the UCAS website about solicitor apprenticeships. And she turned down a place at Oxford to do law at Oxford University, and she took a place to do a solicitor apprenticeship at Evershed, Sutherland instead, for all the reasons that we've just explained. So, it's a high prestige choice, and for that reason, you're right, it is difficult to get, but we can come on to that later. You explained that you're a full service, not you personally, Squire Patton Boggs are a full service law firm. Can you explain in a little bit more detail about what type of law you do? And then probably I should say a bit about the type of law I used to do when I was practicing.
Yeah, so I work in real estate litigation, which can range from anywhere between telecommunications. So there's a relatively new legislation called the Electronic Communications Code that was brought out in 2017. And this works with, as we become a leading digital economy, increasing connectivity within the UK, 5G, things like that. But it can also be renewing leases of high street companies, bigger companies, anything that can range from property. It can also involve going to court when things don't go as well. We typically work on tenant side in terms of that.
And big law firms, they cover a whole range of areas. So, for example, intellectual property law, employment law, corporate law, mergers and acquisitions law, derivatives law, international finance law, and commercial litigation, which is what I did, and then sub-specialised in a practice area called investigations or contentious regulatory, which if you've watched Billions on TV, it's the kind of thing that happens there. So it's money laundering and insider dealing and bribery and corruption and all that kind of fun stuff, which definitely does end up on the front page of the FT. What about a typical day?
So a typical day for me, it's very hands-on and it can be very different. Sometimes I will have to research into things for associates in terms of court cases and provide information that they can give to a client. Typically, I'm negotiating and drafting leases and making amendments on leases, talking to other solicitors to come to an agreement.
Yeah, that's great. And also doing advocacy work like this, right? Misconceptions about your role?
Yeah, so I've touched on this, but I think a lot of people, a lot of parents can think that going through an apprenticeship is worse than uni. It's not as high as uni, not as respectable, but I think that this is a massive misconception. I mean, it can be harder than uni, a lot of unis, to get into an apprenticeship role. It's a secure role, and I think a lot of people can think that you spend time doing paperwork, just making coffees, and this just couldn't be further from the truth. Like Joanna said, you do the role of a trainee, and it can be better because a lot of things in law, they take a lot longer than 6 months. You can get much more involved on deals and on court cases, because you've got a lot longer in a team.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. The best thing about your job?
Yeah, so I think the best thing about my job is the experience I get. You have 4 years of experience before trainees, basically. Trainees will come in minimum 22, 21, 22. So you've already got that 4 years more experience. I started at 18, and the average qualification age in the UK for solicitor is 29 at the moment. So if you think that most people leave uni at 21, 22, you're talking 5-6 years before they can get a training contract. So there might be paralegaling. And for me, I just go straight into that role, straight into being qualified.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point and a really important stat. Final question for you. What are your next steps?
Yeah, so my next steps are passing my EPA, hopefully.
What does EPA stand for people that don't know?
EPA stands for Endpoint Assessment, which is what you do if you're a paralegal apprentice. So for me, my EPA will be based on land, as that's what I do at the moment, and then that will make me a qualified Silex paralegal in September, and then from then I'll do another 2 years in my current team, and then another 2 years I'll do effectively what is a training contract. I will rotate through seats, try different areas of law, do my solicitor's qualification exams at the end of it, and qualify as a solicitor.
Thank you. And before I ask for questions from you, I have something very important to say. I didn't warn you I was going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Jai is here partly because I'm a judge in the Birmingham Law Society 2024 Legal Awards, and Jai is one of the finalists. I think that deserves a round of applause. Yes, Legal Apprentice of the Year. Thank you. Any questions for Jai before I do a little bit of a summary and questions for either of us? No? Okay. So, what I wanted to say is, next, there are no other law firms here today, as far as I'm aware, but there are certainly people and stands you can look out for if you're interested in a legal apprenticeship. First of all, Pathway CTM, who I think are upstairs, they are one of my favourite outreach organisations. And as Jai said, it's very, very hard to get an apprenticeship. And I haven't got into it today because there just isn't time, and you'll never shut me up. One of my passions is making sure there's a level playing field, and that there isn't an advantage for people from middle-class backgrounds with plenty of social and cultural capital. I don't want those people to have an advantage when applying for these golden ticket roles. It's really, really important to me, and it's important to the 50 law firms I work with. So we do lots of awareness raising through social media, meeting young people where they are on TikTok and on LinkedIn. And the collaboration of 50 law firms that I work with is called City Century. They have a page on TikTok called City Century Careers. We also very active on LinkedIn, so City Century on LinkedIn. So we're raising awareness through social media. We're also raising awareness through events like this, and we have bespoke legal events. In London, we had 1,000 young people in person in the morning, 1,000 in the afternoon in person, and then we repeated it in Manchester, and that's with a company called Young Professionals. So I suppose I would say, as a young person, to the extent your school doesn't work with outreach organisations, please encourage them to sign up to people like Young Professionals. Pathway CTM do great, great work in terms of levelling the playing field. They also run something called Teacher Encounters, which gets teachers into employers, such as law firms, just so they're a little bit I don't want to say more informed, have more information about the apprenticeship route, and so they're as informed as they can be. There's another great organisation here called Ladder for Birmingham, and I'm a patron for that organisation, which is just promoting all types of apprenticeships in Birmingham. And lastly, legal apprenticeships are available not only in law firms, but also in in-house legal teams. So in fact, the key sponsor for this event, BT Group, they have a legal function, and within that legal function, they have legal apprenticeships. So don't think that if you're interested in having a legal apprenticeship, you only work in law firms. You can work in the legal function of corporates. And I think that was probably all I wanted to say. I hope we've dispelled some myths. I hope we've made you feel that law is for everybody. Any questions? No. Well, it was lovely to meet you all. And we're literally just behind the escalator if you want to come and see us and ask us questions later. Thanks for coming.